here today to address these broad, important issues, and I want to thank the chair for the time.
Well, thank you so much. We will take a very brief recess and we'll reconvene with the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Okay, we'll reconvene the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and we'll focus on the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. These are the chapters that cover our work here in the Assembly, and certainly I'd like to thank the Provincial Auditor for all of her work on all fronts, including this front. I'm not just saying that because you're now focusing on us, but I will turn it over to the Provincial Auditor for her presentation.
You'll be pleased to know we're going to combine the two chapters into one presentation. I do want to say, just actually to echo the thanks actually to the committee itself, as you'll be able to tell by the presentation this morning. We, as an office, think that you are a very well-functioning committee and do appreciate the support that you give our office in terms of the recommendations and the discussion of our chapters.
Thank you. The chapters before you this afternoon do not contain any recommendations. Rather, they provide your committee with an overview of its accomplishments and the status of implementation of the committee's recommendations. In our view, your committee is very important in that it's the audit committee for the Legislative Assembly. It plays a critical role in fostering an open, accountable, and transparent government and better management of government operations. Your work contributes to the government's implementation of a significant number of recommendations. In your review of our work, your committee makes recommendations either through the concurrence with those of our office or on its own. Your committee includes its recommendations in its reports to the Assembly. Your committee has asked our office to assess the government's compliance with its recommendations and to report on their status. We make this assessment as part of our examinations. We report the results of these assessments in either specific chapters or, if not discussed elsewhere in the report, in a table in the Public Accounts chapter. Each year, in the Public Accounts Committee chapter, we provide you with a summary of these assessments. As set out in Chapter 49 of our 2019 report, Volume 2, as of September 2019, the government has implemented 84% of the recommendations included in the committee's reports. As well, by this date, the government has partially implemented another 73% of the remaining recommendations. These percentages do not include recommendations that the committee has considered but not yet reported to the Assembly. That concludes my overview.
Well, thank you very much for the overview. Thank you very much for your role. This is one that I think that members that sign up for this committee on both sides, I'd say I'm very thankful for the way members participate in this committee as chair. I'm thankful the way we engage in a constructive way around this table. And we're so lucky to have the leadership of the auditor's office and the guidance of your reports and your presence at this table. We go usually once a year and check in with kind of the public accounts committees from across Canada and our national committee. And we learn from some of that best practice. And we also usually come away from that always focused on how we can have some improvements at our table, but feeling that I think that we have a fairly high functioning, effective table. And I think that lends itself well to the protection of the public and public dollars and public assets and the performance of government, all the important work that we take on. So as chair, to the committee members that compose this table, and to our deputy chair, Mr. McMorris, just thank you very much for your participation and the approach you bring to the work.
Yes, I concur with what you said. It's better than I could. But absolutely, when you go to the CPAC conferences, you find out that other jurisdictions don't operate quite as smoothly as ours. The steering committee always works well together. Not that everything goes smoothly all the time, but we have a process that we work it out. And so I concur with that, and I think it's operating very well.
Sure can.
I think we'd be amiss if we didn't acknowledge the work of I was going to say clerk's office. I still want to say clerk's office, just procedural office, and because I think the reality is that they help in terms of keeping us and scheduling and all that kind of fun stuff too.
Yeah, and I couldn't stress that enough. So thank you so much, Rob Park and Kathy Baranek and the rest of the team that have supported this office. It's been Rob for some time now, and thank you very much for that. I think I saw Ms. Mowat with some serious questions.
I just have one serious question, and that is, so the percentage of recommendations that are being adopted by the government is around 76%, I think, in one, and similar in the other, a little bit higher, I think, in the other chapter. Do we know, is this being measured across other jurisdictions? Do we have another benchmark besides comparing ourselves to last year?
I would suggest this is an area that I think we can say that Saskatchewan's leading, because other jurisdictions do not do this. Their committees have not even tasked the auditor to do that compilation. And so, again, it's an area I think where there's leadership in terms of this committee, in terms of asking for that. Anecdotally, though, talking to my colleagues across Canada, I think Saskatchewan does amazingly well. I think if we did have that data, I think we'd be on the higher end of that scale for sure. What we find in the work that we do, when we're working with officials, there's not very many of them that aren't open to looking at different ways to do things and improving. This afternoon, I think we heard the words continuous improvement a number of times, and we do feel that, the officials, by and large, do have that attitude that, yes, we can always do things better. And I think having that attitude in Saskatchewan has served us really well. Always will be things to work on. In part, our office as a role, we like to move up the bar as things go along. I think we do well overall.
In terms of reporting, I see, we talk about the number of committee recommendations that haven't been implemented in each ministry and in different agencies here. I wonder if there has been given any thought to the length of time that exists for outstanding recommendations, in terms of what that looks like if that could look differently in the reporting process, or if you've given any consideration to that, just in how these chapters are presented. One of the things that stuck out to me was on page 350, there is the Water Security Agency has 2 outstanding recommendations that haven't been implemented that are around dam safety, and I remember going through these chapters, and they've been outstanding. And it says it right there that the initial report came from 2005, so we're talking about a recommendation that's made quite some time ago. And if you look at the number of recommendations that haven't been implemented, 2, it looks like, hey, it's all good, we probably don't need to worry about that. But then when you look at the length, like, it's different types of measures. So just a question about whether any consideration of that type has been made.
In this case, we're actually doing this chapter in response to requests from this committee. So if the committee would like us to, take some of that information and group it by, like 1 to 3 years, 1 to 5, or whatever, we can probably sort some of that data if you want us to do that, and we can incorporate that in the next report if you so wish.
I think that would be, I wouldn't want to put you into taking on work that would require extensive resources, but some of the timelines would be helpful. And then as well, there might, through the steering committee, there can be a conversation around sort of some risk assessment around the nature of the recommendations that are there as well, because certainly if we're wanting to prioritize some of those recommendations that haven't been implemented, I think we'd want to be acting on ones that have potential greater risk by way of public safety or public dollars. But one thing that, correct me if I'm wrong, you're always doing, I think, follow-up in Saskatchewan, both by this table, by this committee, but certainly by the auditor's office is sort of the highest standard in Canada, and you're bringing forward all those outstanding recommendations. And actually, to this table, we're still taking time. There's other committees that aren't sitting with outstanding recommendations and hearing them as we are here today. And when folks are at this table, if someone's watching at home, they might think, well, an official can suggest that something's going to happen at such and such timeline, and maybe there's no scrutiny or follow-up after that. We all are can rest assured knowing that there's rigorous follow-up by the auditor's office and then reporting back to the public and to this table. Anything else from committee members? Maybe one thing I'll just, and then we'll close, is I'd like to identify is just those status updates that we work together to bring around as an innovation for this table have, I think, really focused our conversation, allowed, I think it really allows for efficient work at this table and allows us to come in better prepared as members. And I'm really thankful, of course, for the work of the auditor on this front in supporting that work, as well as government. The deputy ministers were essential to make sure that we were bringing forward a system that was going to work and that they were going to support, and all of that's come together. So thanks to everyone for their part in making that happen. Not seeing any other questions, nothing to vote on here, I guess. So just I would welcome a motion to conclude consideration of chapters 50 and 49, focused on the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Mr. Cox moves. All agreed? That's carried. And now we'll move along to the summary of implemented recommendations, and I'll turn it over to the provincial auditor.
We actually thought this was pretty self-evident. We've got 3 chapters. What we've done is, if there's nothing else to report on the ones that relate to it, we just consolidate it into a summary chapter. So we'd be pleased to answer any questions that you may have about the content.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation of the information. It is direct in nature. Are there any questions for the auditor on this front? Any questions for Terry Payton before we shut things down here at some point? Or not seeing any, I'd welcome a motion that we conclude consideration of chapters 22 and 19 that cover the summary of implemented recommendations. Moved by Ms. Lambert. All agreed? That's carried. So we're at that time of the day. I'd welcome a motion of adjournment. Moved by Mr. Weeks. All agreed? That's carried. This committee stands adjourned until the call of the chair.